Six Nations 2025, folks, is done and dusted. Let's have a look back at the pre-tournament expectations to the results that we ended up with and give the teams a grading kind of based on where they performed. You guys can let us know your thoughts on how fair or not you reckon I've got them. And I'm going to start with Wales. How did Wales go in this Six Nations? Well, pretty bloody awfully. They lost their coach and lost all their games. It's the second year in a row where they get a wooden spoon. I mean, expectations were low for Wales going into the competition, but somehow, and this seems harsh, I'm still going to say they kind of fell far below the expectations. I'm going to put them on the far side of the whiteboard. I mean, in 2024, sure, they finished last. They finished with 4 points. They got losing bonus points against Scotland, England, and Italy. And their points difference was negative 51. This Six Nations, their points difference is negative 119. They got 3 points. So they actually got fewer points than the last campaign. They started off getting hammered by the French. There was no real surprises there because France were one of the tournament favourites. But then the second game was the game to be judged on. That's the loss to Italy. That's what sees Gatlin lose his job. Their best performance of the Six Nations is probably Matt Sherritt's first game, where they put in a bit of a bounce-back game against the Irish, which is competitive, but it's still 27-18. They've got a bit of a spirited late comeback against the Scots, who probably took the foot off the gas. And then it finishes with a devastating home record loss at Cardiff to England. So, fewer points than last year, more than double negative points difference from last year. Yeah, I just can't see much to say, other than that it's still a young squad. And if they get the right coach in place, I still think they can change their current trajectory. But right now, it is looking pretty bad. The Italians, who finished 5th, expectations tend to be pretty low for the Italians. And as long as they avoid the wooden spoon, you'd usually be putting them on kind of this side of the board. But again, maybe a little bit harshly, I'm going to say Italy were a little bit below expectations. Last campaign, they had a cracking year. They still finished 5th, but last year they had 2 wins and a draw. This year, it is just the 1 win over a all-time low Welsh side. And basically, apart from that, I don't think Italy did anything else. Like, they couldn't push the Scots, who they'd beaten the year before. Obviously, it was away at Murrayfield, so it was always going to be tougher. But they didn't get close in that game. They got absolutely hammered by England. They got absolutely hammered by France. Like 73 points at home? You can't be doing that. And then they're, again, kind of like the Welsh, apart from their game against the Welsh, their best performance is a spirited loss at home to Ireland. So very similar to Wales in that regard. So their points difference goes from minus 34 to minus 82. They conceded a ton more points and were particularly bad in the second half. Yeah, they were competitive for half a game in a number of these games, but just ended up capitulating. So I kind of like to think this is in some way a compliment that Italy, I think you could have done better than just avoiding the wooden spoon and beating Wales. I think they'll be disappointed with some of the results that they clocked up, particularly the French and the English games. Now, next is the Scots. They finished 4th. They finished 4th last year. 4th seems to be around about the average spot for the Scots. So I guess you could argue that you just stick the Scots and met expectations because they finish around where they always finish. But I'm still going to chuck them here in slightly below expectations. Like, if you look at some of the stats of some of the key performers in the Six Nations, Scotland have some absolute world-beating players. You feel like they can do better than 4th. They finished with a worse points difference than last year, even though it was kind of a similar result on the table. They finished with negative 16 this year. Last year was pretty much at evens. They finished with 12 points last year. This year they're on 11 points, so it is overall a kind of slightly worse campaign in those metrics. They beat the Italians in a home win, which was solid enough, but then again couldn't get close to Ireland, who've just got their number. This was maybe the year to kind of break that drought when Andy Farrell's away and you got Simon East to be taken over. You thought maybe, but no. And then if they could convert some goals against England, maybe we'd be giving them a better grade. But again, they missed their kicks, failed to win that game. And they obviously got a win over the Welsh, let them in back into the game a little bit at the end, and then had a chance to play spoilers against France, but also couldn't get that one done. So I do feel like, even though it's the same old spot for the Scots, I do feel like it is slightly disappointing. Maybe my expectations for the Scots are just unreasonably high. Maybe they finished exactly where they were supposed to finish. The Irish finished third, and this is an awkward position because last year they won the Six Nations with 20 points. This year they win the same amount of games, they finish with 1 point fewer, and yet they had 2 points less. 20 points was good enough to win it last year. 19 is only good enough for third this year. I still think you have to put Ireland finishing below expectations because they were either the joint favourite, slight favourite, or slight second favourite, whichever way you looked at it. England were a distant third favourite. It was either going to be Ireland or France, and the fact that Ireland had France at home meant that Ireland were probably going to be the favourite because they're a hard team to beat at Dublin. Campaign started pretty well. Any cobwebs from November seemed to be shaken off. They beat England at home, although let in a bit of a soft bonus point at the end. They beat the Scots comfortably enough to kind of continue that trend, and then a little bit of a alarm bell with the Welsh result, although that was put down, I think, largely more to Matt Sherritt's impact on Wales as the new coach than anything particularly wrong with Ireland. But then, 42-27 at home to France. That's the key result in this campaign. That's the result they needed to get. And then a bit lackluster against Italy in the final round. So it all kind of came unraveled in the final 2 rounds for the Irish. And then also, like I mentioned, there was only 1 point difference in terms of the overall log. But like last year, points difference, Ireland were at plus 84. This year, it's plus 19. So not really as emphatic this year as last year, despite there only being 1 extra point difference. England, because it feels like I'm being a real negative Nelly so far, England, I think, certainly exceeded their expectations. England was supposed to be distant third. They end up finishing on 20 points, which is good enough for second in this year's campaign. They only lose the 1 game, that opener to the Irish, and they keep their heads up high to get a bonus point at the end of that one when they were seemingly pretty dead and buried. They had a couple of results which people will argue are fortuitous, but it's only the kind of win column getting a big check mark on it that matters at the end. Like France dropped a heap of ball against England, but England defended well, ended up winning that game, and they played the Scots. Didn't score as many tries, but still managed to get a win. So, yeah, a couple of 1 point wins, but are still wins nonetheless, and then seemed to really kick it up a notch in the final 2 rounds when they played the bottom 2 teams. They played the Italians, put them to the sword. They played the Welsh, put them to the sword. So England go from a negative 5 points difference last year to 74 points to the good. So a big turnaround from England. Last year was third, this year second, up from 14 points to 20 points. Good stuff. England, and then finally France. Do you put them in far exceeds expectations? You didn't get the slam. So I'm still going to put them there-ish, maybe slightly more towards it, but not quite. That lack of a win over the English, I think, will still burn a little bit, given how good their other results were. Like France's points difference is plus 125, which just shows you how good they were this year. They were absolutely lethal. Their points difference last year was like 6 to the good. So it's a massive, massive turnaround. There's so much better a team this year than last year. They finished with 21 points, just the 1 loss. Obviously, the loss seemed to have their campaign derailed, but it seemed to galvanize them because following that loss, they went to Italy and put 70 points on them. They went to Dublin and scored 42 points, and then they finished it off with a strong second half against the Scots to take the title under pressure without their captain Dupont. Started well against Wales as well, I forgot to mention that, but yeah, France were very, very good, and barring some drop balls against England, probably could have had themselves a slam, in which case I'd definitely be shoving them a bit further that way, but yeah, France were very, very good value for their win. But yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts. How do you reckon these teams are going to trend going forward? There's a few good storylines with each of the sides. Ireland's transition from some of the veterans to the youngsters. France, what kind of squad are they going to send out here to New Zealand? Can Wales turn around? And like the Scots, can they get the most out of their stars at last? Or is this just as kind of good as it gets? And for the English, how's Borthwick going to go in Argentina? That's going to be a fascinating storyline in itself. Guys, if you want any Six Nations gear now that the campaign is over, I'm sure they'll be having specials. Check out the Six Nations store down in the description there, an affiliate of the channel. So, you know I love rugby gear. If you want to get some of that rugby gear love as well, check out that link. But yeah, you guys take care, and I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.